What's happening, Pod Squad? Thank you for listening today. I have a real one in the room, well, the virtual room. I love talking with this person, Jeani Ringkob from Storybuilt Marketing. As I was saying, literally before I hit record, I think more people need to know who you are. Even though you're like pretty out there, your just stuff's all over. More people need to know about Jeani Ringkob.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I'm convinced. It's the truth. You're dang good at what you do.
You.
So we're going to talk about what you do and what makes you dang good. One of the coolest things about you though is like you're third gen, right? This is you're this. Tell me about it.
I grew up in the industry. My dad grew up in the industry. So it's just in my blood. I left it for a little bit. I worked with my husband in ag commodities, and when we sold the business we were in together, I said, "Sorry, honey, I'm going back to asphalt, paving, all the things."
You said sorry.
It's just in my blood. I love it. And this is a story I don't always tell, but I'll tell it now because I think it sums it up really nicely, and I think a lot of people can resonate with this. I was driving down the road with my dad when I was about 8 years old, driving to see a customer in Grants, New Mexico. I mean, hot, middle of nowhere, dirty,
Yeah.
all the things. We've been on the road for a week. And I was like, Dad, of all the businesses we could do, why do we do this one? And he said to me, "Okay, do you see that truck driving down the road? That guy's going to work today and he's going to get there safely and he's going to make an income and he's going to provide for his family. And that semi is taking groceries to the grocery store. And later today, that car is going to go to that grocery store and they're going to get groceries and they're going to go home. And that military truck is going to a base in order to protect our country or to, take care of, if it's the National Guard, take care of a disaster, all these things." And he's pointing out what might all these people in these cars, vehicles, commercial vehicles be doing. And, I'm kind of puzzled at this point. And then he says to me, "I am just one man and we are just one family, but we get to be part of building the backbone of an economy that is also the part of this world." And that's really incredible. Like, I get to do something so amazing. And that's when I realized I was hooked. Like, how do you get to be part of something that feels so much bigger than yourself? So I think that's really resonated with me ever since, whether we're talking about how does somebody, that started a business grow a business? How do they get it so it's going to be there and strong for their family? How do they get it to where they can sell it because they've tried to build a legacy with it? How do they try to hire better workers and create better jobs and opportunities for them? So I think all of those things, that one statement, that one learning moment with my dad, really is why I always come back and I love working with the people in this industry.
I mean, that's just the bomb. The story is so good because like I'm on LinkedIn a lot and like every day I get someone, messaging me, "Hey, I can sell you marketing. I can sell you strategy. I can sell you," yeah, AI is a big one now, especially when you talk about it in your content, then more and more AI people start crawling out. So like, yeah, that's what you do, but it's rooted in something a lot. You're not just like pitching your stuff. Like you're actually trying to help. Well, I'm not going to explain Storybuilt marketing. I think I know what it is, but what is Storybuilt marketing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about, I guess it goes to something deeper. Like, I geek out on strategy. How do we build better strategy? Because I saw my parent, like, I would say one of the biggest faults in my family's business is, having that plan that was bigger than just this month or this year, and then like breaking that down into how do we do it. And I think my dad was good at containing that in his head. But as the company grows and you have managers involved and you're looking at bigger opportunities, all of that stuff gets more complicated and it gets really hard to sort out and to figure out how are we doing a good job. So that's something that I geek out on, but I also attach it to why it's so important for an owner to have. They need, everything that gets you to that one milestone where you have this huge sense of accomplishment and you've built something, you've created jobs, you're doing great work. All of a sudden it gets really, really hard again. And what got you there isn't going to get you there. And having a plan is something that I would say not nearly as many of us do as we should. But then beyond that, we have a plan, but are we implementing it and are we executing it? Are we tracking if it's working so that we can modify it I think that stuff is really, really fascinating. And to do it in service of owners and leaders inside of organizations that service an industry I love, that's just really exciting to me. So it's all those things you mentioned. I do all those things. I do fractional CMO, I do strategic planning. We're integrating tons of AI. We're actually AI advising for all of our clients these days because looking for, how do we optimize everybody's time and efficiency inside of our operations is so important. But I do it through the lens of I really love the businesses that my clients are running. And I think the work they do is really, really important. And the jobs they create are so important. So we have to make sure these businesses succeed and they do well and they're thriving.
Awesome. Like you might think I'm just gonna say this because you're on my podcast and I'm gonna like butter you up, but like genuinely, your content that you write is really refreshing because it is very future focused. Like you're helping people think about what the next 5, 10 years looks like. I mean, that's the whole point of like our strategy and our marketing is like, how do we take what we want to do and reverse it, right? And I see that come through in your content a lot. And I think that's super, well, it's important because guys like me get stuck in the weeds in the business. And sometimes you can't see the strategy because you're like just in the day to day and things are on fire. Yeah. So what do you think is, like, this is almost like an unfair question, but let's say someone's listening to this who is like a pavement business owner, like, $500,000 in revenue, and they feel stuck. What are the things you're seeing now, Jeani? Like, why are people feeling stuck in their business today in small asphalt business?
So here's a couple things that I think in the current environment, I see kind of coming up on repeat. I mean, we're always in that cycle of what works right now. All of a sudden, we reach a point and it doesn't work anymore, or our bandwidth isn't there anymore, and we have to make some changes. But these are a couple of the things. And when you talk about like my content, I want to drive people forward, but I also want to give you like the how do you do it? And I think about the content I consume. I like to be inspired, but I also need something to help me start taking action today. So that's kind of how I'm going to answer your question. So I have three things that kind of come to mind because I feel like this is what's coming up a lot in my conversation. And a lot of these things are somewhat surprising to folks that I'm talking to, but I think I could also give you some tangible, okay, well, how do you do that? So the first one is something that I've taken from other industries that I found fascinating when I started reading about it and learning about it, and I'm finding incredible success is customer-led research. And I think we can apply this to so many parts of our businesses, but we tend to think, oh, that's something that Amazon does, that Apple does, and they do, but they do it for really good reasons. And this works for everybody, and it can be done on all kinds of any size of business. And with the technology available to us now, it's not nearly as difficult or um, kind of overwhelming to get into some of this stuff. But here's why it matters. It finds out exactly what wins business inside of our business, and it's rarely what we think it is. What maybe worked for us with a small business, when we're really getting competitive, people are starting to look at us, pay attention to us, right? The waters maybe aren't so blue anymore, they're getting a little bit more bloody. We have to find better ways, and the gold nuggets come directly from the people that are making decisions and the people who have the problems that we want to solve. So we have to ask them. So an example of this is I had a client who I went in to help. It was a specialty asphalt additive company, a national company inside the industry. We started doing customer-led research interviews, and we found out that their sales cycle was 18 months long. Not just their sales cycle, but it was taking 18 months for a customer that their salesperson was, in fact, talking to that actually said, hey, I really like their salesperson. I love talking to them on a regular basis. But it was 18 months before I finally said, oh, that's the problem that you solve for me and how I can use it.
That's insanely long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have long sales cycles in this industry, but that was way too long. And so then if we know what that problem is, it was very clarifying and it was this aha moment. But then we could also take those insights from all those conversations, analyze that, and they actually tell us the stories that we need to tell to help our sales team to help decide what new products we want to sell, what markets, how to price those products, all of those things, those golden nuggets are in those conversations. So I think building processes inside of our businesses where we can turn that into an ongoing process where we're intentionally having the conversations, documenting what we hear, finding opportunities, and then translating that back into our strategy is really important. And in that example, I think we reduced that in under 6 months. We had that to about 4 months of a sales cycle in their business, which is huge revenue.
Oh
And
yeah.
that was a couple minor tweaks in how we talked, how we showed up, the conversations the sales team was having really early. So, huge difference for the business, huge difference. So, the next thing that I hear a lot of now is the workforce challenges. So, customer led research was one. Number two is how do we address workforce challenges? And the the generations are just different. People are different. How we consume goods and make decisions about the products we buy is different. How we make decisions about the jobs that we want to have and the careers we want to build is also very, very different. And we can't change that. How we make decisions about where we're going to work, how loyal we're going to be, all of those things have changed. And companies have been very slow, specifically in our industry, to adapt to that and to be willing to change. So I think some of the biggest winners in our industry are going to be the ones that take on employer branding. So how do we attract, not only attract but keep the top talent, the crews, the R&D if you're in equipment, without throwing money at the problem? Everybody, I hear a lot of people say, well, I just have to pay more, I just have to pay more, I have to get more competitive with pay. And
Yeah.
if you actually, the great thing is customer-led research can be used in employee-led research. We've actually used that when we develop employer brands. And what we find is that is actually rarely the case. They're like, that's usually in the top five, but it's rarely in the top three, is that you just need to throw money at the problem.
Mm.
So if we can find ways to decrease turnover by 40%, and sometimes I think that's even bigger than everybody really worries about. How do I be a brand people want to work for? Well, first make sure that your boat's not already leaking so bad. You can't take more people on your boat if your boat is already sinking, right? Out in the ocean. So make sure that you're not losing people. We did a project for a client once. They were going to be adding a whole new division, so they needed to make a bunch of hiring. So they went in to build an employer brand. We started doing the research, talking to their team, and we realized they were about to have a mass exodus, and they didn't even know it.
Really?
Culture problem, and they had a retention problem that was brewing and about to really hit the boiling point. So we had to go back to our client and say, hey, we need to rethink the strategy of this project. Yes, we need an employer brand, but it's going to have to start internally. So, but they wouldn't have known that if somebody hadn't come in and had the conversations with their teams and really got them thinking about, how do you think about being a strong employer brand and positioning yourself in the hearts and the minds of your current team and the team that you want to bring in. I think some of the biggest winners in our industry are going to be the companies that value this as much as they do value generating new business.
Really? And like, and why? Is that because there's going to be a shortage of people so that the value goes up?
Yeah, so there's a shortage of people, but then also people tend to stay in jobs not nearly as long. Like I said, how they make decisions about where they want to work, it's really important now that we understand what they care about, what younger generations are caring about. And so, for example, younger generations coming in, those generations coming out of high school or that have just left high school right now, they're looking for different things. There's actually a really great article, I think was maybe in Fortune. I know I've shared it with a lot of folks, and if anybody pings me on LinkedIn, I'll find it and share it with you.
Nice.
But it's about, I think it's Generation Y being the tool belt generation. And they've watched their parents and these, we had this pendulum of like, you have to go to college. The only acceptable path is to go to college. Well, not everybody's made for college. And the world needs people that aren't college graduates, that actually have other skill sets, that do other things. So we have this deficit over here. Well, the younger generation that's watched their parents has said, I don't really want that kind of debt. I don't really want to sit in a classroom that many more years. There's a whole bunch of them that are actually really eager to go out, but we've done a pretty poor job educating them about opportunities in the trades industries. And even when I say in the trades industries, I mean at all levels, not just labor and those areas, but even about marketing careers, business careers, management, leadership inside of these industries. And what research has shown, all the research that we go in and do with clients as we prepare employer branding shows us that some of the most critical things to these generations are, how do I build a career here? They want to know not only how they get in, but they want to know, how do I build a career? What is the journey and the path that I can go on? Which I love that they're telling us that and we're learning that about them, because we also want them to stick. Like that is also our desire. So let's match that up. So if we can have a company, for example, that tells them, great, start as a laborer, but here's how you're going to become an operator. Here's how you could become a supervisor. Here's how you could maybe go. And then the great thing about our industry is you can stay at any level you want, or you can branch into, you could go into sales after you do this part for a while. You could go into management over here. You could go into all these other areas. And in this day and age, which, I mean, I don't know if maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but I just told a girl this yesterday. I was taking my daughter school shopping. She's getting ready to go to college, and I gave her a resource that I give to high school graduates all the time, because there's so many online education platforms out there.
Yeah.
I think the value of college degrees is really shrinking. You can get hyper specific about the skills that you want to learn, go out and learn them, and get a certification or don't. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, when I look at hiring people, the last hire I made for an executive assistant actually had to do an AI project and come to me and show me what they did and make it. And I went back and looked at what was the logic steps for her to get there, because I wanted to know. It was basically, how could she design something to do one of the specific tasks. I wanted somebody who wasn't afraid it was going to take her job, but knew that there's endless opportunities, but you're only bound by time, right? And those types of constraints. And that's what I was looking for. So, people that are coming up in our industries and that we need to rely on to build our businesses, they think differently, and we have to figure out how to think differently as well about how we're building careers for them. And, then we have to build those messages. We did a great project with the state of Texas. Texapa hired us, and obviously it was a pretty big project, but they now run a whole employer branding campaign on behalf of all of their memberships that funnels potential young employees to their member companies' actual career pages. And AGC Texas and TxDOT have all joined in that, and it's a big partnership down there now, and it's really incredible. And the messaging, because we did research, really resonates with people.
Yeah.
So that's a big one as well. The next one I think is I think it's kind of processes and systems. It's what you mentioned. You and I have had multiple conversations about this. Our businesses reach a certain point and we need to start building systems and processes, right? It used to all be able to keep in the owner's head. That doesn't work anymore. And you can't have it in your head over here and this foreman's head over here and then your HR person's head over here. Everything needs documented. But the really exciting thing is, as people are understanding that and they're taking that on as their businesses grow and they hit these kind of stall points and they're realizing, okay, systems and processes is the next thing for us. The really exciting thing right now is, now we can start integrating workflows, AI, automation into that as well. But it's a double-edged sword. It's, what do I chase? Should I do this? Should I do that? Because we could spend as much time or money as we wanted on subscriptions and learning new technology and all the things. So the next challenge that I think people are having is, I need systems and processes. I need my business to be repeatable. I need to be able to leave it and it still operates and functions. And how do I do that efficiently and with the strategy, the overall strategy of the company in mind, so that I choose what do we do first, what things do we spend time on versus things we don't. So I think there's tons of opportunity in terms of saving hours, eliminating repetitive admin, speeding up proposals, speeding up everything we do and doing more with less, which really kind of is another solution to the employer challenge as well, the employee challenge. So that's the next thing that I see. Those are the big things right now. Customer-led research, I think, is something that we should take from other industries and bring in.
Yeah.
Employer branding is going to be something you're going to see. The most successful companies are going to have some kind of understanding and be deploying employer branding, and then processes and systems. Every single time your company feels constraint and stall, there's probably a certain amount of that that needs to be processes and systems that are aligned with that growth strategy.
Awesome. Awesome. Three huge things. Okay, I have a couple questions about them. And the first one, I don't really know how to almost articulate it, but I thought of something while you were talking about this customer-led research, and it's an extreme example, but hopefully you can kind of get the essence of what I'm going for here. And I might just be overthinking it because in asphalt, maybe it's a simpler. It's not like a big tech company, but I was listening to an interview of Kevin O'Leary, who I'm not a major fan of in general, but it was an interesting interview. And he famously worked with Steve Jobs years and years ago, like the early 2000s, and he had very candid comments to say about Steve Jobs, who was a very polarizing business person. Obviously, you want to talk about like employee relationships, it's probably not the not the ideal person. But he did say something really interesting, and this is kind of well known about Jobs. Is like there's one meeting in particular where a lot of these executives, including Kevin, were there, and he famously said, and I will remove the expletives, that like the customer wants what I tell them they want. Now that's the polar opposite of what you just said, right? And I realize there's probably nuance there, but like, is there an element of that to be had? So if I'm like a pavement business owner and I heard what you just said, like, what if my customer doesn't always know what they want? Is that something we would run into?
Absolutely. I mean, we have conversations about this with clients every day, especially because they shouldn't, right? Like, most likely, I mean, even when I was selling to the DOT, I mean, I started selling $1 million highway projects to the DOT when I was in my teens. I thought that's how people got into sales. I don't know. I obviously had a
That's normal. Yeah.
into sales, but um, they had other requirements around their job. Maybe they were a civil engineer, but they didn't actually work in a plant and they didn't actually lay down asphalt every single day. And they book smart knew all of the alligator cracking, fatigue, raveling, all that kind of stuff, but they weren't like in it with their hands on it every day. And so they wanted a lot of help, and they actually needed a lot of help understanding, okay, well, what are the latest things? And what is it actually really like in application? And after 5 years and 10 years. So I think that that's still really relevant. Like, you figure out also, if you're doing customer-led research, you're also looking for gaps in knowledge and awareness. We have something that we actually create for a lot of our clients, and it's like a whole chart of awareness, and it takes you through the levels of awareness that your ideal customer profile has during the journey of their awareness. Are they problem aware? Or maybe they're not even problem aware.
Yeah.
Maybe they're like, I don't even know that my road is really crummy. Like, or I don't know that there's an underlying problem because there's some heaving starting underneath there, right? They're just not even aware of it yet. Where you have a trained eye, you pull onto that and you see it. But it's very important for us because we're too close to the solution. We're too close to the solution, and we need to be able to figure out by the things that they're saying to us. First off, what are the different awareness levels that our ideal customers have? How do we show up in our content, in our marketing, in our sales conversations, all of those things on our website that meets them where they're at? So that's one of the things when we do customer led research that we're looking for is what are the awareness levels? where are our best customers at, and what types of, how do we bridge that gap? What do they need to know? What do they not need to know? And a lot of it is, it's not so much, and people find this fascinating when it comes to marketing and sales, it's a lot less about the tactile problem, the external problem people are having, versus the problem, how they feel about the problem they're having. They're embarrassed that their driveway doesn't look so great, right? Those DOT engineers, they are concerned about what their boss says about how they're managing money. They're overwhelmed about the number of miles that they have to maintain on a specific budget. They're overwhelmed about how trying to calculate the life cycle cost of an investment that they're making today over the next 10, 15 years, because budgets are a big thing for them. You don't know those things unless you're asking those questions and then integrating that back into how you go to market. And that's all strategic. That's part of over the bigger part of strategy. That's a small piece of it. But what you said about Steve, I mean, like Steve, I mean, obviously Steve Jobs was brilliant. Like he did a lot of things incredibly well, but you, like you said, he's very polarizing. And I would say that was probably a statement that he can say because he was at a level where he could have the luxury to say that.
Mm.
There's probably a lot of other people underneath him that were doing things like customer-led research that knew the industry well enough that they understood some of the demands. And he himself probably had, I mean, and I think there's a lot of scenarios that point to this, almost a very intuitive understanding of what people wanted around those technical things that maybe he was so smart, he didn't even realize that he knew those things or was very naturally intuitive about it and was applying that to some of those things. I think when you look at the success of the Apple product lines, I think that has to be true about it because it just solved a pain point for people. And I use Apple as an example. If you think about when Apple started building Apple stores, that was the gangster move. Nobody was doing that. Everybody was saying, we are not buying brick and mortar. We are not paying rent. If they want to buy our products, they will go online on this great thing called the internet and they will just buy our products. And
Yeah.
that's how we're going to, and we're going to ship it to them. And this is so innovative and so great. They did the gangster thing and they said, no, we are going to build a temple to the brand. And we are going to build an experience where people come in and they can touch it and they can feel it. And we're going to have the Apple Bar where they learn how to use it and they can take a class and we'll train them and we'll solve their problems when something breaks or doesn't work, right? Like somebody had to know that, like, this, the problem, and like I said, it was how they felt about adopting a new technology. It, like, if you think about Ford, what did Ford say? Like, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me that they wanted a faster horse, right? Or a
Mm.
horse that didn't get as tired, right? But he intuitively knew that there was a different solution. And I think you see that same kind of innovation in Apple. But they were still solving those emotional pain points that people had around the products that they sold. And even though we're selling asphalt and striping and equipment and safety products and all of those kinds of things, there's emotional ties to why people pick one product over another or one brand over another. People will pick, a Vogely over a Lebo, whatever it is, for very emotional reasons if they're really deep in this industry and they make that kind of connection.
And would you say then that for a really small company then, because that's most of the people listening here, the best way to do that, you're not going to be able to build a temple, in a brick and mortar location. So maybe it's what you said, right? It's asking the questions to get to the root.
Right. It's more of, those are more in the relationships, right?
Yeah.
What if you specifically took time? So we'll just think about this in a real simple, easy to implement way. And maybe, and if we integrate systems and processes as well, maybe you create something where after each job, somebody in your sales team or you yourself as the owner, depending on the size of the company, takes time and understands the value of how important it is to call that customer up and not just say, hey, we're done. I'm sending an invoice or something, but instead says, hey, we wrapped up your project. I'd like to call you in a week or 2 weeks after, you've had your traffic on it or whatever the scenario is. And I want to understand what your experience was like. Like, and first off, think about this. How many of your competitors are doing that? Whether they had a good experience or a bad experience almost doesn't matter anymore because you're asking for their input and you're saying, I care about your opinion. And guess what? Their opinion is going to reflect the opinion of the next person that you want to do your next project with. But if you had a process to do that, you did it on a Zoom call or something, you recorded it with Fathom or Otter or any of those other things, and then you let AI help you analyze that, and you did it all in one place where you consistently continued to document that, and you started to see, okay, we're hearing a lot that how we maybe they wish we would have communicated better at the beginning of the project about expectations, or that we do a really good job at this that nobody else does a good job at.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, great, we should talk more about that, and we can easily fix this other thing. But it's just a matter of making that a process inside your business. It could be your salesperson, it could be a foreman, it could be you as the owner. It's an incredible way to develop a relationship. So, right, that in and of itself is a temple to your brand, but it's in the act of building that relationship.
You know what? You know what's so funny? That like it's
That I am
such a
such a geek
it's
about this.
no, because I'm into it too. Like if you think about it, like it's so important. So as you're explaining it, this is how my brain works. I'm immediately thinking, okay, customer feedback at the end of the job. How do I not do that? How do I automate that? But that's completely the opposite point. The point is you're actually injecting the human component into it by saying like, hey, how can we? Because you could just send out like a Google form and be like, hey, rate us, tell us what worked, what didn't. That's annoying. It's like when I get those emails, I don't respond to surveys. Like, no. But if somebody called me and was like, hey, I really wanted to know what you thought, that's huge.
Yeah, and this is the thing. You can do both depending on the size of your company. I
Sure.
have a company this morning, we're doing this exact same process, and we know that only a certain percentage of people are going to be willing to take the time. And I'm doing the research on behalf of them because it's a bigger national operation. And there is a little bit of value if you get to a certain level of transparency. Like, I don't know that that customer would have told them that, hey, I really like them, but it took them 18 months to help me figure out what they did. And I was pissed. Like, he told me, I was mad at them. I was mad. Like, I feel like once I realized, I feel like they wasted time, and they did have, like, I did have a problem they could have solved on multiple other projects before, even though we were talking. So there can be some value in that, but there's a lot of different ways. I think having an automated system where you set up like a survey that automatically goes out, because some people will be willing to do that
Mhm.
and glad that you at least asked that way, but they're not going to take the time to get on a call.
Right.
But then also ask for the phone call, like always ask. And you're going to get a smaller percentage of people that have the time or the willingness to get on a call, even if it's only for 15, 20, 30 minutes with you. But it's going to be more than you think. And there's valuable data in both. Like the Texas project, we surveyed managers inside of companies, we surveyed employees in English and Spanish, and we did interviews of managers and employees. So we did all of that because you get different types of data from each one of those. And if you want to make this a process, the best companies that get the most out of this are just going to make it part of their process. Just like you invoice for a project, you send a survey and you make the phone call and you collect that data, right? You document it, which is why I recommend doing it. I mean, none of us love getting on Zoom calls all day long, and part of the people that are in this industry are in the industry because they don't want to do that stuff. But you'll be really glad later, especially now that we have access to AI that can help us analyze the conversations and see those trends in it, especially if we start collecting them over time. And then you start going, wow, I didn't realize how many people felt so strongly about something that you, who did this every single day, don't even think about. So I think there's value in doing both. And if you think it's easy, you set up a survey or something like that, you do it once and you just check and make sure it's working periodically. It's easy. And then the manual parts, the reaching out and asking for those interviews. But if you just get a certain percentage of those, there's gold in those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad you grounded it because yeah, you're not going to get 100% obviously. And you're right, some people would take a method over another. That's all awesome. I could nerd out on this literally the rest of the day. But there's one I really want to make sure I ask you about the employer branding. I'm very interested in that. Yeah, I take that really, really seriously, but I also know that there's always opportunities to do it better. So when you talked about like the importance of the growth plan for an employee, so basically not just doing the same thing they're doing now and they have no expectation of anything else. So they're just like, I guess I literally, we recorded some content earlier and I said it was like if you're going to the gym and you do the same weightlifting exercises, the same reps, the same weight for 6 months, you'll hate it. Right. Because it's so what it, oh, yeah, it's terrible. You're not going to get results and it's just going to be boring. Even if you wanted to maintain, it's just boring. So if you are an employer and you've got that employee and you wanted to start really building that growth plan, what does that look like? Like, what strategy would you recommend for someone to just like start that to paint the picture for their employees?
So I think one of the first things that you need to do is more internally before that you're even at the employee piece. And you need to think about what do like the best people in our company, the people we wish we could have 10, 20 more of, what does the path look like for them? And we will have people that come into our organizations that are really content at a certain spot inside of the company and they want to stay there and they want to do a really good job and they want to own it. And we need some of those and there's not that's a great type of employee to have. And so their triggers might be other things. Maybe it's finding so a slight diversion here is one of the things we also hear a lot is I want a schedule where I could go take care of, especially in our industry, go watch a soccer game, take my mom to the doctor, do things like that. Finding ways to maybe schedule share that could be huge for employees like that. So that's like another kind of bonus tip. That's something we see a lot in the research. But if you're thinking about those career paths, I read some research that just blew me away recently. So equipment operators, something like almost 80%, it was in the 70s, it was the high 70s, are over 55 years old.
Oh, man.
That's bad. But this is what I know because I've been doing research on employees and what their young generations are looking for. And I hear a lot of complaining they leave, they don't stick. Well, of course they don't stick. They come in as a laborer. They want to learn how to operate equipment, especially for a young new hire in the industry. That's exciting. That's where they want to be. And there is no opportunity because those people are getting on that equipment and we're leaving them on it forever until they die.
Yeah.
So that's one, like that's how I interpret that data. Those are the things that I am looking at that, and that's the story. There's a story behind all the data. So, how do they learn to be an equipment operator? So, sit down with your team, map out what could career paths look like inside of our specific business. Do you have rollers? Are there estimators? What are all the different roles? What are all the different types of equipment? What are the salaries associated with that? What are the benefits associated with that? And for the Texas project, one thing that we did is a little bit more unique because it was an industry at large that we were trying to capture. But we created four different personas, like the visionary, the journey, the voyager, like all of these things. And we bucketed the types of careers in the industry into what those could be. And they could actually take a personality assessment. And it was like, okay, you're a visionary, and here's the types of jobs in a visionary, and here's the type of salary, and here's how many years it would take to get here, or the different branches you could go on. And it actually created like a visual map for them to see that happen. You can do something like that in your company on a smaller scale and incorporate that into your content, into your career landing page, into your job descriptions. I mean, HR should stop writing job descriptions. Like get marketing, or your AI these days could even write better job descriptions. let them be unique and let them lead with the things that the people you want to hire want to hear. Talk to them in their voice, you know, and really paint those pictures and talk about you can start here, but you could go here or here or here. And then that gets people excited about what comes next. And most people that start a job have decided if they're going to leave your company, they've actually decided in the first 2 weeks, but they don't leave for 6 to 9 months. And so, what do you have in that interim? You have a not very productive, toxic person in your business. So, doing this stuff really early on is really valuable. I think one of the important elements that people don't realize should be a part of employer branding is building a really strong onboarding system and creating career paths that can be part of a really strong onboarding system, making that first impression of telling them we are going to start you here, but you can go all these other paths. But then you need to follow that up, right? You can talk, you can say like it's like a great first date, and then a few dates in, you find out maybe that date wasn't so great, right? You got to like keep it like you really have to have a plan. If you map all these journeys out, figure out like, well, how often do we need to talk to them about their career path? Is that once a year? Are they going to need to get training? How often do we need to check in with them and make sure they're still happy, or where do they want to go? And then know, what do you need to learn? Is there certifications, training? Do they need to mentor, mentee with somebody to learn something? All those operators should be mentoring mentees that are coming in as laborers in our industry, not just sitting on those operating pieces of equipment. And I know like I've heard all the arguments. No, they attach their equipment, they don't like to give it up. I know, but you guys are leaders and business owners, right? And you have to be thinking about a bigger picture and really nurturing these people, and you want to hire people that are going to want to help you grow your business. So, really mapping that out inside of your company and then communicating it through career landing pages, content, social media, in referral programs. If you have referral programs, which are a great organic way to recruit, teach your people how to talk about those journeys. Give them those same journey maps and explanations, not only for themselves, but so that they can also tell their great friends that would also be a great fit for your company.
That's brilliant. Like, so funny. We have an employee like referral system, and I use air quotes and kind of diminishing it a little bit just because I was literally just saying today, like, I just think it's missing something. Like, yes, it incentivizes people and we can pay money and maybe we should pay more money. But you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, well, what are you referring to? Do you just have something where you have an employee say, you should come work here because it's great? Or is it like, here's why it's great? Like, here's what it actually looks like. That's awesome stuff.
And you're the best storytellers on that stuff are the people inside of your company. Like ask
Yeah.
them, ask the ones that love it there, why they love it. Let them tell their stories. Will they let you video them, or will they will they get involved in the interview process? But I think one of the things about I think that is we build these great referral programs, but some of the times I think one of the biggest roadblocks to them actually working is we're creating something, but we're asking our employees to do another thing. We're asking them to do more work, right? And to think about, well, who do I know and how do I ask them and how do I explain it and stuff like that. So the next step, the next level of that is creating content that they can easily repurpose to go talk to that. Reminding them through either content or using SMS text messages when they're not at work that, hey, we have an opening coming up and we wanted to remind you on this Sunday afternoon to be thinking about anybody in your network. Here's what the opening is. Here's what a potential career path for it is. And here's who is a great fit. Make it easy for them to go, oh my God, my cousin's sitting right over here at this barbecue with me. Like, right? Like, doing like, because we create that stuff once and then we send it out en masse instead of sitting around and going, well, why aren't they just like, going out and figuring out how to be little marketers for our cool employer brand that we built? Well, that's still our job.
Yeah.
They have another job for us and we want them to recruit. But the great thing about this is when we've done research on employer branding, one of the other things that ranks really high with retention is the team that they work with, the people that they work with. That is always in the top two. And it's so they actually want to pick who they work with. And if you make it easy, you remind them and you make it super easy to share this link, have them call me, tell them and remind them and trigger those things. They actually want to participate in building their own teams and controlling the people that they work with. And if you are, constantly curating a strong team that has that you want to have, then you also want them to be bringing in other people. If you have a bad team that you don't want, you probably don't want them recruiting either.
No doubt. Well, I will be taking the audio from this podcast and I will be running it through my AI because there's a lot there. I'm like writing notes furiously on my phone here about referral systems and I can barely read my notes, but I'll figure it out later. That's why we have AI. That's right. Brilliant. Jeani, where do people find you?
We don't have to take our own notes.
It's so true. So true. Your free content and stuff is amazing. Your newsletter. Where do people find you?
So I mostly play on LinkedIn. I like to build relationships. I think that's where real authentic business conversations happen. So always find me, connect with me there, DM me there. We also have some kind of fun. I think assessments are fun. So we have a growth strategy assessment, and we also have a workforce strategy assessment that are designed to be very top level. Like, do it in 5 minutes, figure out where your biggest gaps are so that then you can focus just on getting a quick win. Like, where should I focus? I could focus in any of these areas, but where might I get a really good quick win that I could build on that makes sense? So we have those resources available and I can share those links with you. But our website and all those resources is at storybuilt.marketing.
Excellent. Oh, that is so perfect. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely put the website in the show notes. So if you heard any of those resources and you're like, that would be awesome. And then, yeah, you're not hard to find on LinkedIn either. So we're going to send them.
I'm easy. I'm there. I'm hanging out. We're on Facebook too, but LinkedIn is probably where I spend the most time. I'm having the most conversations. And we try to do webinars and we have a lot of really great webinars coming up on conference season. We have one actually specifically on making sure that your LinkedIn is really working for your growth strategy as well coming up that we've just been polishing up the presentation on. So we do webinars on LinkedIn too that are free. And if you're following us, you can definitely hop on any of those. And we have all of them there under events. You can go find old ones and watch any of those as well.
Oh, I love it. The value is full. Wow.
We try to push as many resources out there. We can't help everybody, but we can because we can just let it be out there. So
totally. Well, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone who's a little more in touch with what's happening right now, macro strategy, marketing, employees, customer profiles, customer feedbacks. Thanks for sharing some of that with us. That's awesome.
Love it. We always have fun talking. We find all kinds of great things.
You know it. Thanks, Jeani. You rock.
Absolutely.
Your spreadsheets and your systems for your business suck, and you might be losing a ton of money in your paving or your pavement maintenance business. Look, our company recently switched to One Crew, and it is the only industry-specific, all-in-one platform for paving companies, for pavement maintenance companies, striping companies. It doesn't matter if it's like the sales cycle or if you're estimating or even if you're trying to manage your crew, One Crew has features for all of that. It is unbelievably effective. So if right now you're doing a lot of your estimating on spreadsheets and at the end of the day or the end of the year, you don't even know if you're making a lot of money, I guarantee you One Crew will help you. It is so easy to make more money with this software. You'll love it. Here's the best part. Listeners of this show get $500 off of the setup fee if you go to getonecrew.com/stripeit. $500 off of your setup fee, take a free demo and have a look for yourself, man. Getonecrew.com/stripeit.